Hello everyone, good afternoon. Thanks for joining our Facebook Live event. We're talking about study permits today. I'm just gonna allow a few seconds for everybody to join in and we're gonna be starting shortly, okay? For those who already posted your questions on the comments below on my previous post, thank you. I do have them here in front of me. I'm gonna try to tackle them all today. If you do have questions, you still can, take your chance and post them down in the comments on this video. And at the end, I'm gonna get to them as well, okay? For those who don't know me yet, my name is Jane. I am an immigration consultant here at VisaPlace. We are located in Toronto, Ontario. So if you're in the area, if you're in Toronto or in Ontario, and you want to come in for a visit or for a personal in-person consultation, feel free to do that as well. We'll be very happy to have you here. We've been doing this Facebook event series. We started a couple of weeks ago. This is our second event. So thanks for tuning in. And let's get to it. Before we get to the technicalities of the study permit in Canada, I want to go over with you on why Canada is such a popular destination for international students, right? So aside from having great standard of living, we do also have high standards for education. So we have a very broad portfolio of education institutions and programs for those interested on studying abroad. So it doesn't really matter what are you looking to study, or if you're looking for a shorter 1 year, 8 months program, or maybe an MBA, a master's degree, we have pretty much everything. So it's, you do have options. We can certainly find something that is suitable for you. Well, that's one of the reasons why Canada is so popular, because we are flexible and we do have a lot of options, and this standard remains, right? Still a very high standard of quality for education. Those are just a couple of reasons why Canada is often listed as one of the top destinations for international students, right? Now, let's get to the questions. One of the questions that I get all the time regarding study permits or studying in Canada, can I work while I study, right? Oftentimes people want to also have that work element to their study program, because it's important to, it gives you the opportunity to explore the labor market and while you're here exploring the city as well, right? So yes, as a student, you can work part-time, so that's up to 20 hours a week while you're studying. You can also work full-time during your scheduled breaks. So if you have summer break or any other scheduled break, you're allowed to work full-time, so 40 hours or even more, 30, 40 hours or even more. During your regular hours, study months, you should be able to work part-time as well off campus. So you can also work in campus as well. Another great advantage of the study permit program is that after you finish your studies, after you complete your studies upon graduation, you become eligible to apply for a work permit. So even if you don't want to work while you're studying, you want to focus on your studies, you will be able to request what we call a post-graduation work permit, and that permit would allow you to work up to 3 years in Canada after graduation. So you're still gonna have the chance to have that work element to your exchange program in Canada, right? Now, the post-graduation work permit is, the duration of that permit is usually linked to the duration of your studies as well. So if you study for 1 year, likely gonna get 1 year post-graduation work permit. If you study for a year and a half, usually 1, sometimes 2 years. And if you study for 2 years or more, you should be able to get a 3 years post-graduation work permit. So essentially you'll be in Canada as a student, let's say for 2 years, and then as a worker for 3 years. That's a 5 years authorization to stay, right? Aside from the opportunity to, and one of the advantages of being able to get that post-graduation work permit is because it's an open permit. So essentially you can take up any job that you like and work for as many hours as you wish under that permit. And one of the most popular immigration avenues for Canada, which is the Canadian Experience Class, one of the main requirements is to have at least 12 months or 1,500 more or less hours of work experience in Canada. So once you have that permit and you're able to work and acquire those 12 months of work experience, then you become eligible for immigration. So basically, it's a clear path to immigration, even though we're looking at anything from 2 years, 1 year of study and 1 year of work. You can already immigrate that way. If you need more time, if you have more time in your permit and you want to work for more than 1 year, that's totally fine. But you already become eligible to apply for immigration as soon as you complete the 12 months of work experience, right? That work experience can be combined with different occupations, and you can also, it doesn't have to be continuous. So if you work for 6 months and then you take a break and work for 6 months after that, you're still going to be able to be eligible for the Canadian Experience class, which is pretty good. So basically, the study permit program, although it's not an immigration program per se, it does lead you to an immigration avenue. Another great, I see a couple of questions regarding that. I'm going to go back to the questions later. But another great reason why study permits are often so appealing for young families especially, it's because if you're married and if you're coming in with kids, your spouse would be able to get that work permit, that open work permit, we call that the spousal open work permit, as soon as you get your study permit. So if you're coming in as a couple, while one of you is studying, the other one will be able to work full-time as well, which is really good because, you know, it shows that the study permit program is not only focusing on a student, but also in the whole family, right? So if you're coming in with a spouse, a common law partner, or a spouse, that person will be able to work full-time under an open permit for take up whatever job in any occupation while you are going to school. If you do have kids, young kids, they will be able to attend Canadian public school at no additional cost. So that's another great quality of this program, especially if you're coming in as a family, right? And that applies for primary and secondary education only. So it doesn't apply for post-secondary, right? So if you have any kids under 18, they don't need their own study permit. They can come in under a regular temporary resident visa, and they will be able to attend the school while their parents are studying and working. Now, when it comes to applying for that study permit, what are the most important documents that we will be looking at here? The core document of the study permit application is certainly the letter of acceptance. So before we can even submit an application, you must first be accepted by a designated learning institution, right? So the letter of acceptance, it doesn't. Most importantly, would be to choose an institution that is designated. Of course, it must be listed on the government's website, and choosing a program that is relevant for your relevant to your career or your professional aspirations, right? That will certainly impact the assessment of your study permit. If you choose something that is linked and makes sense, it's aligned to what you did before or what you intend to do in the future. This type of information, this type of it's not an official document, but a study plan should always be included with your study permit too, and linking that study plan with, again, your career or your past educational history or even your aspirations for the future. It's very important as well. Aside from the letter of acceptance, funds is probably one of the most relevant and important documentations that are required by the government in order to assess study permits. So essentially, you must be able to prove that you were able not only to pay for your tuition and your travel expenses, but also to pay for your living expenses while you're in Canada. Although you're allowed to work part-time, you shouldn't be relying on that work to support yourself while you're studying. So you'll be required to prove at least 12 months, so at least the first year of living expenses. So the minimum amount that we have right now, it's $10,000 for a single applicant. So if you're coming by yourself, not coming with your family, the minimum that you must be able to prove that you have available to support yourself for the first year, it's $10,000. That number will change if you're coming with a partner, and it will change if you're coming with dependent children as well. People oftentimes ask me, how much do I need? Is $10,000 enough to cover my living expenses for a whole year? It really depends on, of course, your lifestyle and the city that you choose to relocate to. So you can have very different budgets if you look at different schools or different cities. mostly, right? That's a question that we cannot answer too generally. We have to look at the specific decisions that you made before that. When it comes to the financials, another important thing to keep in mind is that not only proving the minimum is oftentimes not enough. If you do have assets, it's highly recommended that you include proof on your paperwork as well. So it could be anything from having properties back home or having a car. Maybe you have some investments or things of that nature should be part of your application as well. And again, we're not trying to prove funds, but we're rather trying to prove assets. So that would help you not only to indicate that you're financially sound, but also that you have something to go back to once you finish your study program, right? That's something to keep in mind as well. Not very common question as well. Do I need to have the funds under my account? No, you can have a financial, what we call a financial sponsor. So that could be maybe your spouse, maybe your parents, maybe you have someone else that is sponsoring your studies in Canada. So we can use someone else as a financial sponsor as well. If you're doing that, so if the funds are not necessarily yours, oftentimes a support letter should also be included, right? Shall we get to the questions now? I see a lot of questions here, so I'm gonna start them now. Feel free to keep posting them, okay? Are there any age restrictions for study permits? No, there are not age restrictions to study permit, as long as it makes sense with your career and your professional aspirations. You should be fine. So it's more a matter of being able to indicate how that makes sense for you to study now, rather than focusing on a specific age, right? So we see a lot of people oftentimes doing, changing careers or wanting to try something else, or going for a second degree, right? So usually in those situations, those individuals will be not under 20s and not under 30s even. So even if you're like under 40s, you could still be very much eligible and successful on your study permit application and your study plan in Canada. Can my spouse work in Canada while I study? Yes, as I said, as long as you enroll on a post-secondary education, yes. So if you're coming in to study ESL, so English as a second language, then your spouse won't be able to work. But at the moment you become a post-secondary student, then yes, your spouse should be able to apply for that's not an automatic application, you should apply as well, so you're submitting 2 applications. But your spouse should be able to get what we call the spousal open work permit and work in Canada while you're studying. How long does it take to get approval after you apply? That really depends, because study permits are not processed in Canada, they are processed abroad, right? So they are processed at the visa application centers abroad. So it really depends on where you're applying from. So if you're, let's say, if you are a Brazilian citizen and you apply in Brazil, it might take anything from 4 to 12 months, or if you're applying from a different visa application center, it might take a little longer. It really depends on how busy they are. So it's can't give you an exact answer for that one. But you can find that information online quite easily as well, if you look for it. I am 21 years old. What possibilities do I have to get PR? Plenty. So if you're looking to come to Canada as a student in order to immigrate later, 21 is a very good age. If you don't have any work experience yet, you're gonna have to acquire at least 1 year before you're eligible to immigrate as a skilled worker. So you're gonna be coming into Canada to study. After that, you start working. Once you get the proper authorization to work and you start working, accumulate the 12 months of work experience, you become eligible for the Canadian Experience class, and you have it. That should be your path to PR. My daughter is a US citizen, she's 16. Can she get admission in college in Canada, and can I come with her to support her? Yes, she should be able to get admission to college as long as she's graduated high school, all right? You can come as an accompanying parent as well, but you won't be able to get a work permit. Work permit are only available for spouses. So as a parent, you can come with her. You should be able to get a temporary resident visa for the duration of her studies, so you can stay with her, but you won't be able to work, right? The same applies for kids. Let's say if you're coming in as a family and one of your kids is, let's say, 19, 18, already finished high school, so is no longer studying, maybe looking to get to university level, that person won't be able to work either, right? If they do intend, if you have kids that are older than 18, they do intend to continue their education after high school, then they must acquire their own study permit. How about family of 6? Would they need 6,000? No. So the way the numbers work is the following. I have it here. So for as a single student, you need to provide full funds of 10,000, as I said. And for your spouse or the first family member, an additional 4,000. So that's 14. And then we add 3,000 per year per additional family member. Right? So for you and your spouse or the first dependent, 14, and then 3,000 per additional dependent per year. That's the amount per year. I can complete. Someone completed education in 2013, and so there's a huge gap in my studies. Can I still apply in Canada? I'm not quite sure if that person is already in Canada or not. Completed in mind. So there is a huge gap in my studies. Can I still apply in Canada? Yes. If you're referring to a big gap between the last time you studied and then you're looking to get another study permit, start a new program, there's a fairly large gap. That shouldn't be necessarily an issue per se, as long as it makes sense. If you take into consideration your situation, your career where you are right now, and your professional aspirations, right? So it's less like, oh, there's a gap between last time I graduated and my new program, and oh, it makes sense for me to go back to school now because I'm interested in this and that specific subject, right? So yeah, it shouldn't be a problem as long as you know how to make sense of it on your application. Next question. I am 36 with age 1B in the US, 6 years of experience. Wife is 32 with a bachelor's degree. How much chance of us getting PR? I would need more information. This particular video is mostly focused on the study permits, but I will highly recommend you maybe book a consultation with us, and we'll do an individual assessment, and I'll let you know what are your chances and what would be the best course of action as of now. But you do have the work experience, and that's what we need in order to get started. I completed. Okay, how about family of 6? My daughter. If I want to start studying in fall 2020, when should I apply? So if you're looking to start next year in September, now it's a good time to start your research. Now it's a good time to start, gathering all the documents that you need, and at least have in mind what will be necessary for you to apply. It's never too early. It's better to have time than to do things in a hurry. So if you're looking for fall 2020, is the perfect time to start researching the institutions, deciding the program that you're going to pursue, and start gathering the paperwork that you would be required. So the more time you have to work on your study plan and to prepare your application, the better. And another important detail is, if you apply for your study permit early and you have that permit at hand, you can always come into Canada a couple of months earlier before your program starts. So this way you have the chance to look for a place, get settled before jumping right in on your studies. So if you're starting school in September and you want to be here by July, right now it's a good time to get started. 6 months, it's not too long to get started with your paperwork, for sure. Why do some study applications get rejected? Again, I think it's important to understand. A lot of people get frustrated or confused with this, but meeting the minimum amount when it comes to the financials, or meeting the minimum requirements and producing all the documents presented on a checklist that IRCC provide us with, it's oftentimes not enough. I think a lot of people fail on writing a good study plan and understanding what the visa officer is actually looking for when doing an assessment on their study permit, right? And that's why we have lawyers doing it, really, because it can look quite simple, it's just a form and then a checklist, but there's a lot of information behind that the visa officer will be looking for while assessing an application that might not be quite obvious for those who are doing it for the first time. Just bear in mind that if you're doing your study permit yourself, and that's the first time you're doing this and probably the only time you want to be doing it, right? and someone else that does that for a living, that person probably already have the expertise and they already know what to look for while preparing the paperwork. So I'm not saying that if you have a representative, your study permit will be approved, but if you have someone who understands the requirements in more detail or more depth, you certainly would have at least a better chances of understanding your chances and understanding why certain applications were refused or not. I hope I answered your question. Would I need language to go to Canada as a student? I only have SAT in 2016. It really depends on what your education institution requires from you. We do need a non-conditional letter of acceptance. So if your letter of acceptance says this acceptance is conditioned to IELTS with this result, or is conditioned to 6 months of ESL, that letter of acceptance is not, it's conditioned to something. So in those cases, then you must have that language exam to kind of satisfy the condition of the letter of acceptance. But if it's non-conditional, you should be necessarily need to prove that for immigration, right? Because you already got the non-conditional letter from this school. So it depends, and it's not an official document that everybody needs to submit, but certainly it doesn't hurt, it's helpful, but has more to do with your learning institution, whatever requirements they have. I'm from Afghanistan. Can I study in Canada? I graduated from university in 2016. Yes, for sure. You can certainly come in and study in Canada as long as you follow the process of applying for a study permit, and yeah, absolutely. I am studying design, but I don't have any experience yet. I have some English international exam. I am 21. Can I still apply to come to any program in order to get PR? If you don't have any work experience yet, you must acquire some before you become eligible for immigration to Canada. Now, knowing that, yes, the study permit would be a good option for you, because this way you'll be able to come study after you can apply for the post-graduation work permit. With that permit, you'll be able to work in Canada, and with that work experience, yes, you'll be eligible for PR. So it's a longer strategy, but for some people, it's a very good way to get to your end goal, which is PR. Okay, is that a maximum age for applying? No, as I say, there's no specific age requirement here. Is there a max gap years between studying? No, as long as it makes sense for you. You could be, in a workplace you could be working for 10 years and then you decide to do a career change, or maybe further your education on a specific area that you are currently working. So no, there's no specific gap. The gap won't be necessarily a concern as long as it makes sense for you and for your career, right? Wife completed a bachelor 3 years degree in 2009, and then 6 years of work, and now she's a dependent on a visa, so she can't work. Can she go and study in Canada? Yes, as long as you have the valid study permit, yes, you should be able to come in and study in Canada. Okay, guys, do you have any further questions, or that's it? If you, absolutely, thanks for listening, guys. I hope that I tackled most of your questions. If you still have specific questions that you like to have answered, make sure to visit our website, and you can book a consultation with one of us here from Visa Place from there. And this way we're going to be sitting with you, looking at a specific scenario, and then be able to provide you with more detailed advice for your specific case. So yes, feel free to visit our website. You can get a discount on your consultation if you use the promo code Jane50 from this, because you watched this video. So feel free to use it, take advantage of that. So the promo code is Jane50, and you get 50% off of your consultation if you use that. Okay, and I'll see you next time. I hope this was helpful, and it was my pleasure speaking with you guys. Bye bye.